again, going back to when I was still working a 9 to 5 job and just taking all my extra time and pouring into a side business. What's the downside there? If it failed and it just didn't work out, and and I'm staying at that job, the downside is I still have my salary, so I didn't lose that unless layoffs or something happened outside my control. But I still have that. The only thing I lost was just maybe a year of my life that when I gave up the social things. I didn't give up everything, but I gave up some of it.
But the first thing I wanted to go into is some of like your early days. Like you kind of got into a little bit of a financial pickle. I think you were in debt like $86,000 or something like that. I wanted to talk about just some of those early money mistakes you made, and then just your quest for financial literacy and digging yourself out of that hole.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to like my personal finance journey, the first thing you need to know about me is I'm a late bloomer. I talk to people online. I mean, being a part of on Twitter and YouTube and whatever, I meet all these people who are very young and already investing in this. I was doing any of that. So, into my 20s, I was just credit cards were just disposable, scan it anywhere you want, no big deal. Racked up the debt. I had no investments to speak of. I was living paycheck to paycheck. My salary wasn't great. There was no inheritance coming my way. I've never received one. There's no like saving grace, no saving throw. So I had this kind of just a bunch of bad decisions compounding over the decade known as my 20s.
Hmm.
And then at like 29, I guess I finally decided to like awaken and grow up a little bit. But I kept having panic moments.
Hmm.
There's nothing quite like not being able to pay your bills or worrying where your next dollar is coming from or whatever. To just like on a regular basis to just kind of set this anxiety inside of you. And I just got me and my wife were just fed up with it. We're just like, this has got to change. And so I started investigating how I could change that and fix that. And the very first thing I ever read was "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" by "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" by Ramit Sethi.
Yeah.
And looking back, do I agree with every single thing he outlines in that book now? No, but it was a great like starting place for me to like say, hey, here's what you can do with your money. Here's how you can manage it. Here's some places to invest it. Here's what investing does. And it showed me the 25-year-old versus the 35-year-old both starting from zero and what it looks like in the future and how much that extra decade of compounding is like, you can smoke that other comparison there. And so I opened a Roth IRA and started investing and started thinking about how I could better manage my money. And then slowly but surely kind of got to where I am today, which is in a much better financial footing. But I do not miss those early anxiety riddled days of my finance journey at all.
Was your wife on board with this? Was she part of this journey too, of like financial education? And was she reading, Ramet's book and other books that you guys might have been into?
She's on the same page in terms of we need to make a change here.
Hmm.
She's never been really into the finance. Like I geek out about it now, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed learning about it and reading about it. She was never doing those things, but I think guess I lucked out or chose well, depending on how you want to view it. Choosing my wife, and that she is a very frugal person,
Hmm.
whereas I obviously for a long time was not. So she took a real risk there jumping in with me. But when I'm like, hey, we need to do these things, right off the bat, she had she was equipped to do this kind of change of pace with me. And so she was able to use that kind of saving mindset and stuff, and let's be frugal and be careful how we spend our money. And then I'm just kind of learning as I go, and she's just being supportive in it. So yeah, it's nice, like kind of partnership in doing that, but it wasn't. Both of us were trying to drive the financial ship at the same time. Just some complementary ingredients there.
You mentioned "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." Were there other books that were influential at the time that, as you started your learning journey, they were books that like made a big impact on you?
That was the biggest, and I don't even remember how I found that book. I probably typed "best personal finance book" into Google or something and found it. And then started reading Ramit's blog and stuff, and really liked the way he talked about personal finance. I was given Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover at one point. I did read most of that. Dave did not resonate with me as much,
Hmm.
but I will say on being on this side of things, I'm not anti credit card. I'm not anti debt. Um, but I really appreciate that perspective when you're in a place where you can't control it, or if you just never can in the future, then I see a lot of merit to it. But yeah, on this side of it, that I've learned how to control these things. I think some of that stuff is a little bit silly, but I think it also has a real place for certain people. And just ignoring my credit cards and basically cutting them up was a kind of a big like step in the right direction for me in that kind of early stages of the journey.
Did you ever get into Mr. Money Mustache? Was he a guy that made an impact on you at all?
Later,
Later,
not
okay.
not in the early stages, but yeah, I started. I we first got out of debt and started doing investing and things like that, and saving and budgeting and all this stuff, and then I kind of got introduced to the whole fire movement and
Yep.
um, you know this whole retire early idea, financially independent, retire early. And I had never heard of that. And of course, if you're going to search that stuff online, you're going to find Mr. Money Mustache and others. And I was intrigued by it. I will say it did not resonate with me in terms of like what they would call like lean fire and
Uh-huh.
stuff. I'd be more the fat
Fat
fire kind of a
fire.
person. Because some people, they truly figure out what their absolute minimum is to just stop everything and retire right now,
Mhm.
and they're perfectly happy to live that really frugal lifestyle. And I can respect that and I appreciate that. But one of the things that I want my wealth to do for me is buy some comfort,
Mhm.
but also buy me like time freedom to travel wherever we want, whenever we want, or to go to nice restaurants and stuff like that. So I do like the idea of retire early, but it would definitely be more on the luxurious side of retire early if I was going to pursue that.
Yeah. Let's go into a scenario like there's somebody listening to this, they're in debt, 50, 60, whatever the number is, $60,000. I remember at 25 looking at that same chart where it's like, oh, if and I hadn't started saving much at all. And you compare that to if you wait till 35, I started to feel like I'm behind the eight ball already. Like I haven't gotten started. I need to get started. So let's say there's somebody, in their 20s listening to this, they're in debt. What are some just like first money moves that you would recommend to them to make to start kind of building, scratching, clawing their way out of that situation they're in?
Well, I'm a realist, first of all. And the harsh reality, if you are in that situation, you're 35 and you haven't quite got started on financial journey, is um, it would have been a lot better if you'd started earlier.
Mhm.
It would have been better if dumb young Andy hadn't waited till 29 to start on my financial journey. If I had started at 19,
Mhm.
the world, would be wildly different for me personally if I'd done that. That's a reality. However, I also simultaneously believe that, and I truly believe this because I feel like I'm a walking testament to this. And I've seen others who are even older than me who have started from zero and who are a testament to this. That it's truly never too late if you start.
Mhm.
And the worst thing you can do is just sit on the sidelines and continuously like weigh your options, or worse yet, you go, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next month, or I'll get on that next year, because that just never happens. So the first thing to do is just reality check where you're at, and then go, okay, this is fixable, savable, and then to start breaking it down into as small of pieces as possible. And for me and my wife, that was literally the most boring and mundane and everyone's least favorite thing when it comes to personal finance, which was just budgeting.
Mhm.
Because if you don't know where your money is going and what it is doing, you're going to be clueless about like taking control of the situation. So we used YNAB, which I
Mhm.
love YNAB,
Which
the
is
budgeting
what does that
software.
stand for? You
You
need a
need a
budget.
budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's a little bit of a different way to go about budgeting. You kind of put your money to work ahead of time, and then you spend out of those buckets and stuff. It's kind of like the envelope system,
Yep.
but digitally with a few caveats. It resonated with us once we got over the learning curve, and it really helped us take control of that. But like taking control of your spending is huge because you might already be in a surplus if you can take control of your spending and have a little bit of extra to start making some good like future moves. But if you do the budgeting stuff, you realize you're still at paycheck to paycheck, which is where we were. Then the next step, in my opinion, is just use the one thing you probably have some abundance of in terms of assets, which is time, and just start trading your time for money. I did every side hustle imaginable. I Ubered and lifted, and I helped people with handyman tasks. I did photography on the side. I did video editing, freelance, anything I could to earn extra money to take my salary and then expand that so I have some extra capital to start working with. And I had to give up a lot of, like social time with friends
Hmm.
and hanging out and stuff like that. But it's like such a short term sacrifice. If you can really get the ball moving, then eventually you can start enjoying all that stuff. But if you never do that,
Yeah.
you never get to enjoy that stuff without being like constantly in a panic attack mode because your money's not going very far. So it's like take control of your money, figure out where it's going, and then figure out a way to make more money so you can start like putting it to work.
So, what was your full time job at the time? You're doing these side gigs, but what were you doing full time?
As a creative director at a software startup here in Austin, um, and I when I was doing these side hustles and things, I would do this when I got home, but also I was trying to start my business, which I've done for the past 10 years, which was a photography business.
Hmm.
And I would on all my lunch breaks, I would go to the because this was a startup, and so they were still building out the building. There's an unfinished side. I would take my lunch and I go sit in one of the unfinished conference rooms on the other side of the building, sit on the floor, and get on my phone while I'm eating my sandwich or whatever, and call potential clients that I can try to convince me to hire me to be a photographer for this event or that thing. And I was trying to simultaneously while working my normal 9 to 5 job build this side business. And then when I got home, I would do more of that and I'd edit photos or I'd go shoot. And then all my weekends were just spent photographing. And then free time when I wasn't photographing or doing the job, I'd be driving for Uber and Lyft or whatever. I was just trying to make as much money as I possibly could um, on top of my normal salary so I could just put it to work and clear at the debt and start investing and start actually feeling like I'm a little bit ahead of the game, whereas I've been so far behind that entire time.
Was your wife also doing side gigs at the same time you were doing your hustles?
Yeah, not as aggressively. I was definitely the really aggressive one with that. But the photo business is something we both did together, and that
Hmm.
was on top of her full time job at the time. And she's always like flip stuff on eBay and Craigslist, and she will go shopping for vintage clothes at like Goodwill and clean it up and steam it and fix it, and then sell it on Poshmark or eBay or whatever. So yeah, she has done a lot of that. Just not I kind of went crazy with it because I was all of a sudden super motivated,
Hmm.
but group effort.
So, how long did it take you to pay off that? It was $86,000 worth of debt, right?
Uh-huh.
How long did it take you to pay that off? And were you? I kind of wanted to hear about how you did this. Were you investing at the same time, or were you strictly trying to pay that debt off before you even got started in investing?
So the first thing we did was we tried to build up a little bit of an emergency fund, and at the time it was very meager. It was like a 1 or 2 thousand bucks or something like that. Just something that when the tire on the car explodes again, or have an emergency like doctor thing or whatever, we have a little bit of money. We don't have to swipe the credit card. So once we built that up, we were almost solely focused on debt because I was just so fixated on that. But then, as I was reading "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" and probably some stuff online, and people are just talking about the importance of retirement and this magical thing called the Roth IRA, uh, I, we then like focus on just saving up $5,000, which at the time was the minimum to open a Vanguard Roth IRA. And I opened one for me, and then we did it again and opened one for her, and then we were just back to debt attack. But the debt, I think it took us it's a little less than 3 years, like 2.5 years, just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it and working around the clock to knock it out.
And then the Roth, were you investing in index funds?
It was a target date retirement fund, which in hindsight, I picked that because it was just like the Vanguard recommended thing. It was very non-aggressive, and the exposure to like the S&P 500 was also not like huge. It still has like bonds and stuff in there. And so in hindsight, I probably would have just thrown it all into S&P 500.
Hmm.
But I did that, so it didn't quite grow as quickly early on as it maybe could have. But yeah, now it's all S&P 500 basically.
So, at what stage of the game did you realize, like, that you talked about fire? At what point were you like, this is realistic? Like, I could leave my regular full time job. When did that start to become a reality, and how did it become a reality?
So that became a reality when because while I was doing all these side hustles and things, I was building that side business, and the side business kept growing and growing until I was making the same at my side business that I just had the extra time I had left over, I built that thing, was making as much as my full-time job.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to do my full-time job anymore.
Right.
I wanted to not have a boss. I wanted to be my own boss. And
Yeah.
because my entire life I've been an entrepreneur. Elementary school, junior high, high school, starting all my own little businesses. Did all kinds of crazy things in college. But just before college, I kind of got this. I was kind of convinced that you go to college, you get a degree, you get a
Right.
job.
You
Real
followed the
job. So I
script.
did that. Yeah, I followed the script, and then as I was executing on the script at my job, I'm like, why am I doing it? So jump ship to do my own thing. And then I just poured money into investments and stuff, and that's when I started kind of seeing, like what the potential was and the possibility was. And then I started, I think that's probably about the time I encountered the idea of retire early and how you calculate, percentage drawdown on those investments and what they could look like in terms of like an annualized salary and what those numbers need to be to have a certain amount. And oh wow, if I do this for X number more years, work could be optional if I decide I don't want to do my own thing anymore. And that was a very exciting prospect.
Let's go into like calculating some of those numbers a little bit. Are you're familiar with the 4% rule, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Can you explain that to our listeners? Like, I love the 4% rule. I think I like to think about it all the time. Not all the time, but it's a fun calculation to do. Can you talk about that and just how you think about it in your own life?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's the Trinity study is what it's called, what this
Yes.
number is based off of. But essentially, the idea is, if you're putting your money into your investment account, you're investing into stocks or index funds or whatever. Of that entire giant amount of money, there's a certain percentage that you can take out of it on a yearly basis and live off of, and you will never diminish the main amount. It will perpetually grow into the future. And the reason this works is because, like, if you take the S&P 500, for example, which is just a collection of the 500 largest companies by their market cap size in the U.S., if you buy into that index fund, that's the picture of the U.S. stock market, uh, over the past 100 years or whatever it's existed, it's returned on average 8 to 10% a year. Now, some years it's down 7%, and other years it's up 23%. Over 100 years, it's averaged at 8%. And so the idea is, if you were invested in something like that, and you draw out 4% from it, there's still another 4% over time that it continues to grow, and it will perpetually grow, and you can still live off of it. Now, I think that that study, there is certain scenarios where it doesn't do as well. So some people who are really conservative don't do 4%, they do 3%, or they do 2%. But there are, kind of calculated ways you can take money out of these investments you've worked so hard to build up, live off of them, and still have more money than you did before.
Yeah, I love it. It's fun to think about how much you need per year to live on,
Mhm.
and then figure out, all
Yep.
right, here's what nest egg I need to make to withdraw 4%, and then I'm good. There's a guy, an investor I like, Nick Sleep is his name. We mentioned Clay Fink, my colleague, who he's really into Nick Sleep, he was a hedge fund manager, and he was a value investor, but he had this idea of like an X number where after a certain amount of time of his investing career, once he hit this X number, he was going to be done. And he actually did it. He shut down this fund. He told his investors, invest in Amazon, Costco, and Berkshire Hathaway. That's what I'm going to do. And he was done like at 40 something. Is that something you think about for yourself where you've got this number and it's like, if I hit that, I can stop doing everything? Or do you enjoy all the, like, for me, I would think it would be hard to quit a game that you've excelled at, like this guy, Nick Sleep. He was an excellent investor and he just stopped. I wanted to hear your thoughts on
Ye-
that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's two aspects. One, when I'm talking about the 4% rule, you can kind of dream up what your scenario is going to be. You can say, if I want to live on 100 grand per year, or if I want to live on 200 or $250,000 per year, that is 4% of what number, and that's your end goal number.
Mhm.
So you can kind of dream up and think about what's that big number, that big shiny object you can kind of chase.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I do have. It changes all the time. It's been like $10 million, or it's
Right.
been like $20 million or something.
Yep.
Uh, and maybe I'll hit those things and I'll actually want to stop doing whatever. but I'm having a lot of fun with all the things I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I think it's exciting, the idea of hitting a certain number and quitting and doing whatever you want. That's a great dream,
Hmm.
but I also think it's just as exciting to hit that number or whatever, and for that for work and all things to be totally optional.
Yep.
And that's exciting in and of itself. And then still doing something else that makes money if you want to, or for fun, or do it for a little while, take big swaths of time off and
Yeah.
go travel or whatever, and then come back to it. That's one of the things I love about um, investing and building wealth and whatever, is it gives you options.
Hmm.
It buys back your time effectively. And if you can do it successfully enough, like that's just, I don't know, it's just such a freeing, calming anxiety cure in my mind to know that at any given point, at the drop of a hat, I can say, I'm going to take the next year off and there's no consequence to me whatsoever.
Right. Tim Ferriss has got the idea of taking mini retirements, and I've always thought
Mhm.
since reading the 4 Hour Work Week, I thought that's
Yep.
a great idea. And you just took one. You went to Japan. You had mentioned that you had gone to
Hmm.
Japan. It's great to have that flexibility to just be able to be like,
Yep.
"Yep, I'm going to take a couple, 2, 3 weeks and go visit Japan."
Yes. I mean, yeah, there's in the world of online gurus and personal finance stuff, there this phrase thrown around, lifestyle design,
Hmm.
and for some people it has a like negative connotation and it's kind of frou-frou or whatever.
Right.
But I'm a big believer in it in just the practical sense, in that, if once upon a time, if I want to take a vacation, I had to ask someone's permission to do so.
Hmm.
I had to put in for time off or whatever, and that's not the case with every 9 to 5 job. And I'm not anti 9 to 5, but you have to answer to somebody. You have a boss who's going to tell you what to do, and you have to work towards whatever their vision is for the company or whatever. And I just I just don't want any of that.
Hmm.
I just want to decide what's important to me, and I want to chase that thing
Yep.
on my time and with whatever amount of motivation or lack of motivation, depending on what day it is, I want to throw at that problem. But I also want to, on a Tuesday, go to the movies,
Hmm.
or the following Thursday, me and my wife decide, oh, let's go to Japan, or let's, go to a different state. Let's go, or just a few weeks ago, I went just skiing with my dad.
Awesome.
I like having that freedom to do those things, and that's a money thing,
Hmm.
but that's also just like a lifestyle design and like being my own boss thing. Money helps with that whole situation, but also just like cutting all the constraints,
Hmm.
all the rules. And I'm not, I'm not lawless. I can't do
Right.
whatever I want. But getting outside of working for a company or having to ask permission or whatever gives you a certain level of extra freedom, which I treasure, and
Mm.
that is one of the most important things to me. The money is a tool that gets me there. It's kind of the side thing. I've never been fixated on like I love. It's fun to stack money. It's fun to build these things, but I've never
Sure.
been fixated on I love money so much. I'm Scrooge McDuck. I want to stack whatever.
Yeah.
I'm fixated on if I build up enough of that stuff, it lets me do the stuff I actually care about.
Yeah. I just had I love that. I had an interview with Dickie Bush, who I don't know if you follow him on Twitter.
Hmm.
He was working for BlackRock, and he had this epiphany like in his early 20s where he saw a guy like who was 35 or 40, somebody that he would aspire to be eventually, have to ask for permission to go to his son's little league baseball game. And like I think it was like a
Yep.
light bulb moment. He's like, I don't want to live this life, even though I'm making this
Yep.
massive salary, and who knows how much this guy was making. He was like, this is not what I want. I want optionality, like you said it.
Man, optionality, it's just once you know it's as an intellectual exercise, it's fun, but once you actually taste it a little bit,
Mhm.
I don't know why anybody would ever not want it.
Right. So I want to get into getting to that point. One of the things and ideas that you and I touched on briefly before we got the interview started was making asymmetric bets. So explain to me how you think about asymmetric bets.
So asymmetric bets, I mean, this is a very broad idea, and it can apply to a whole bunch of things. I can speak specifically about how I've applied it to my life, but also how, what I view an asymmetric bet, and that is, it is some way that you either leverage your time or your money or something. You make a bet putting one of those things on the line, and the downside is fairly minimal. Meaning, if the enterprise completely failed, it just blew up in your face, it materially wouldn't affect your life all that much. But the potential upside is maybe limitless, maybe unlimited. It's so massive. It's like a why would you not do this thing? So for me, that has been, for example, early on in the investing. Early on for me in investing, when I first found Bitcoin, I started investing a little portion of my money into that. If you have $1,000 and you put 900 into what you deem as the safe investment, but you put $100 into what you see as something that has a huge amount of potential possible. But if it goes to zero, you lose $100, you still maintain 99% of your wealth. Now I've shifted on my percentages since this, but initially that's how I viewed it, and it blew my wealth up. Like it rapidly increased, my net worth and stuff like that. But another angle that I think is maybe um, even more interesting is leveraging your time
Hmm.
for asymmetric bets. Again, going back to when I was still working a 9 to 5 job and just taking all my extra time and pouring into a side business. What's the downside there? If it failed and it just didn't work out, and I'm staying at that job, the downside is I still have my salary, so I didn't lose that unless layoffs or something happened outside my control. But I still have that. The only thing I lost was just maybe a year of my life that when I gave up the social things. I didn't give up everything, but I gave up some of it, and then the next year I can party hardy and have fun or whatever. It's materially doesn't affect you very much beyond the short term, but long term, it is radically changed my life. Building my own business and just getting back into a mindset that I had once upon a time, but then kind of let myself get programmed out of,
Hmm.
has opened so many possibilities where I can't even imagine, going back to the other thing.
What if in 2024, you got a little bit better every day? When you're learning a new language with Babbel, that's exactly what you're doing. And if Babbel can help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, imagine what you could do in a full year. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. Thanks to Babbel, I can start having conversations and order my food in Spanish at local restaurants when the situation allows. It's no wonder they've sold over 10 million subscriptions, and that studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove that Babbel is better. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get 55% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/WSB. Get 55% off at babbel.com/WSB. That's spelled BABBEL.com/WSB. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So I see a Bitcoin book behind you, I believe. I can't tell which one it is, but
This,
let's get into Bitcoin. That one.
yeah, it's a little Bitcoin symbol. Yeah,
Oh, it's a symbol. Okay, I thought it was a book. Yeah,
it's actually like a little stress reliever.
oh, nice. I love it. I love it. So let's get into Bitcoin a little bit. Tell me about your origin story there. Like, how did you get turned on to it? At what point did you become, as they say, like red pilled? Like, talk to me a little bit about or orange pilled rather. Tell me about your story there.
I first heard about Bitcoin in either 2012 or 2013. I was big into building my computer and overclocking. And this, I was online in like computer enthusiast forums, and I had some friends who I'd chat with about, do you get the latest video card? What do you check out the new Intel CPU? Just very nerdy stuff.
Hmm.
And those are some of the first people who ever encountered Bitcoin, because it was the idea that you could take your computer at home and mine,
Yep.
quote unquote, mine this, cryptocurrency, whatever that is, and, get this thing, and it has some kind of monetary value. And I had a friend of mine who was using his computer just like at night in his off time. And he was mining like, I want to say it was like 5 to 8 Bitcoins a week,
Wow.
something like that, which he was very excited that he could sell every week for about $30 in total. So he's like, I paid for my video card in just 2 months after doing this. You should do this. I'm like, this is got to be a scam. This is bogus. You can't make money out of thin air. This is so stupid. And I just
Wrote it off.
completely dismissed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and then 2014 rolls around, and this is right after the bull run of Bitcoin, where it went up to $1,000 for the first time.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, that just happened. Well, that sucks. I didn't get involved in that. Can I still get involved in this space? And so I built a mining rig to mine another crypto, and I played around with it, trying to figure things out. And this is when I was working my job, doing my side hustles, building my business. And this is early days of like mining and stuff. So every time I come home, it would be like offline, and I couldn't figure it out. And I did mine some stuff, and I did a few things, but it's just my head was swirling. So I was like, done, give it up, sell it on eBay, done with that chapter, and ignored it again.
Mhm.
And then 2000, maybe end of 2016, beginning of 2017 rolled around, and I just kept seeing people online talking about it. And at this point, I'm like, I think there's something here. Started investigating it a bit more, learning, poking around, figuring it out. And I just bought a little bit here, a little bit there. And then towards the end of 2017, which I know you said was kind of when you first got involved, as that price was running up and up, I was like, oh my God, this is what's happening. I got to be involved. And then I made a series of just boneheaded mistakes, bought at the wrong times, bought the wrong stuff, got involved in just outright scam,
Yep.
lost a lot of money. But going out of that kind of crypto bull run at the end of 2017, the beginning of 2018, as it all crashed back down to earth, and I watched so many people give up and just say it's a scam. I'm done with it. That you can't make money in this space.
Mhm.
This was, third time's a charm. This
Yeah.
was the time that it finally, in my head, I'm like, okay, I lost a bunch of money, very painful. Made a bunch of bad decisions. I'm going to learn from those, but there's something here. What is this thing? And I started to investigate. Went to the deep end of Bitcoin. Every free dollar I had, I dumped into Bitcoin, all the way from $20,000 down to sub $4,000, and then back up to 12, and then back down to 7. And just when my friends were like, "You're going to lose all your money. This is so so stupid." It finally clicked for me that what Bitcoin is, what it could be, and what this was akin to, in which, in my opinion, it was like if you were in the dot-com bust in the 90s,
Yep.
as the internet, after at this point 30 years of existing, is finally starting to get mainstream adoption and attraction. It just had this massive like collapse of everything. But if you're one of those people who is willing to pick up the pieces and sort through and figure out what is quality and interesting in the space, because that space is not going anywhere, there's a lot of opportunity there. So that for me was crypto, which has been a big part of my story. Which, of course, the cornerstone of that is Bitcoin, and I've just been drinking the Kool-Aid ever since. And now, it's a huge portion of my net worth. It's a huge portion of my portfolio. And I've effectively not paid any attention to index funds or traditional investments over the past couple years, and I've almost 100% gone into this space, and that's where I am at today.
It's interesting to me. It's like you got in or heard about it early enough to see enough of these cycles to know
Yep.
that there's some patterns here that repeat,
Yep.
appear to repeat. It's great that you had the conviction to be able to buy it, like as it's going from 20 down to 3,500 or whatever it went to, and continue to just keep that high conviction. What was it that allowed you to do that? Who are some of your influences, books, articles? Like, how there's a process that I think people have to go through to develop that kind of conviction, whether it's Bitcoin or any investment. What were some of the influences for you?
Um, so I mean, I've read many of the normal books you read for Bitcoin stuff. I've got several on my shelf, like the Bitcoin Standard and stuff. I've read those, and those were certainly influential in like helping me understand, um, broadly what it is and how it works and stuff like that. But I think a lot of it was just, and I can't. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly like specific individuals or stuff, but I feel like I had seen a series of people who were fairly experienced investors. One, kind of gravitating towards Bitcoin, but two, had talked from experience how they've seen these other things, these big moments in history, these fundamental changes happening. And again, it's just hard for me to not make that comparison and parallel with like the internet in the early days and talking about things like that, and the pieces just kind of slowly clicking into place. That like I felt like if we're going to have a world that is internet connected and a digital world where we're all moving everything online, why would we not also have a monetary system that is built in that same world?
Mhm.
And that started me down a rabbit hole of investigating fiat currencies like the US dollar and others, and how they don't last very long, traditionally. And the US dollar is one of the longest lasting ones at this point. And that's a little scary, but also starting to learn about how it works. How does the Federal Reserve work? They can print money basically whenever they want and however much quantity they want. And we, as the end user of that currency, we lose our buying power. We are, succumb to inflation and rapidly rising prices and stuff. And so Bitcoin just kind of kept sitting in the back of my head as this idea of maybe this is a way I can actually protect my wealth against those things. And I say this while also being on Twitter at the time during these bear markets and watching every, you know, expert and every pundit and every dissenting opinion on Bitcoin talk about how, oh, what a great, hedge against inflation you have here that's down 86% or whatever. But for some reason, I don't know what to attribute this to. I've just been able to zoom out a bit on Bitcoin for the first time in kind of all my financial life and really see a bigger picture instead of just looking at the 6 months or 9 months ahead of me, the 12 months ahead. I started thinking about some of these things in terms of 5, 10 years, 25 years, and where I think our economy in general is going from a macro level, and where I think me on a micro level need to be poised in order to not be completely eroded by these kind of big systems that are in place. And Bitcoin is just the logical explanation for like that conundrum for me. And so I just kept reading it about it, watching videos about it, and digging in deeper and deeper.
Did you ever read The Creature of Jekyll Island? Was that one of the books that you happen to read? It's like the history of the Federal Reserve, and
I like.
and after you
I want
read
to
it,
read that now.
you're pissed off, and at that time when the author wrote it, there Bitcoin I don't believe existed. It was like his recommendation was precious metals, for
Yep.
hard currency. But yeah, it's fascinating to see the cycles of it. I remember this is totally a little off point, but I remember the internet collapse, the .com collapse, right around 2000, 2001, and Amazon plummeted down to, I forget how low it got, but I remember buying Amazon at $12 a share.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, if it goes up to 16, that's a 30 some percent return. I'm going to sell at 16. That'll be great. And I did, and in retrospect, it's just like, you calculate what that would have been had you just held on to it. And, in hindsight, it's whatever, hindsight's 2020, but I've had the experience of that, and it didn't cost me much at the time, really, but like now I realize it's like these drops and are opportunities, where when everyone else is panicking, it's like whoosh, that's the time to push the chips in and acquire more if you can.
Yeah, I think your analogy there to gold, precious metals is another big one that kind of hit home for me as I investigated. Again, it's hard for me to tell exactly which people I was listening to at the time, but it was a reoccurring theme that when confronted with the problem of inflation, time and time again, people talked about the power of being in something like gold and a precious metal.
Mhm.
But simultaneously, I'm learning about Bitcoin, and in my estimation, it seemed like Bitcoin was the next evolution of gold, which is why people call it digital gold. It has, uh, there's certain arguments to be made about the properties of it. It's not actually physical. You can't use it for other applications like you could gold in electronics or whatever. But many of the other things it does have, where you can transform energy into this pretty hard asset. It's very, very safe and secure. But whereas gold was, tough to move across borders or expensive to handle or whatever, and it's just this cumbersome thing that no one actually wants to transact in,
Mhm.
Bitcoin solves all those problems where you can send your wealth across time and space and stuff. And it's just this kind of beautiful picture of where you could, sock away your money into this digital gold that has been invented, and you can carry that wealth with you going forward and hopefully withstand the storm of inflation. And I can tell you, just in the past 6 to 7 years that I've been in this space, yes, it has some very dramatic cycles, very dramatic downturns and stuff. But if you zoom out from when I started to where I'm at now, it has it's just absolutely just sucker punched inflation in the face,
Oh
and
yeah.
blown away gold and everything else. And it's just been this incredible way for me to protect and grow my wealth. But you have to, again, have kind of like a 40,000 foot view of it.
Right. Couple things. Talk to me about how you deal with the volatility, like seeing it go from 67 down to, I forget where it went, 15 or 16,000. How do you deal with that? That's hard to see your net worth like blip, 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 blip in, Bitcoin terms. Well, in, fiat terms too. It's like, this is painful. How do you deal with it?
Yes. So I've thought about this a lot, and I feel like for me, there's really three reasons why people panic with that stuff. Because yeah, if we talk about the last cycle, Bitcoin hit $69,000, and then which maybe, I mean, it's too early to call, but I'm assuming at this point, with hindsight, the bottom was 15,800 right after the FTX collapse and all that. That's dramatic drop.
Oh.
But I feel like most people who go through those things, they panic and whatever because number one, they don't understand what they're buying or what they bought into. They don't truly understand the thing that they have put their money into.
Yep.
They heard people talk about it. I mean, there's probably people who watch my channel who just buy into things because I talk about them, even though I constantly say, please do not do that.
Right.
You have to investigate this stuff yourself, be curious on your own, just, decide if it's a good place for your money. People would just buy into things because they think it's going to make them rich overnight, or take your pick. They don't truly understand it. So having a real, true understanding of what you're getting into is crucial to, dealing with these major downturns and stuff, downtrends for the asset. Two, I have the advantage, and I'm not even an OG in the space, but I have the advantage of having 6 to 7 years of experience doing this now. Some people have been in it for over a decade now or whatever, and that's pretty awesome for them. But the more time in the market, the better your capability of withstanding these things.
Yeah.
Time in the market always beats timing the market, as they say. But truly, the more cycles you live through, the more you understand how it all functions. But then the last thing I would say, and this goes for anything where you're just you're watching the price like a hawk, and it goes down, and you're freaking out. That's oftentimes a signal that you're overexposed. You've just,
Yep.
if you're putting in your money, if you're investing money into stuff, and it's money that should have gone to your rent or your utilities or your groceries, and you're just dumping it all in, and you watch it go down and down and down, and you're like, oh no, I needed that money. You just never want to be in those places. So, I've learned the hard way with all those things, and I've tried to kind of incorporate those into how I view this stuff. And now I have the advantage of being in the space for a while and having a pretty good understanding of what I've bought into, having that kind of long-term view, and not feeling overexposed, even though other people, for outside observers, would look at how much of my net worth is, Bitcoin or whatever, and go, you overexposed. I know if it were to go to zero tomorrow, I would be okay. And these are all important things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that third point, the can't sleep at night, whatever test, is a really good one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any price predictions at all for this next cycle that we're in? Do you have any kind of numbers that you think we may or may not hit?
Well, I was one of the people who was convinced we were going to $100,000 in the last cycle. So, take my predictions with a grain of salt. I do stand with that prediction, though, because I was assuming that we'd have these spot ETFs approved in the last cycle, and I thought that was the missing ingredient, and it just did not happen. But we have it now, and I follow the statistics on the inflows of capital and the available Bitcoin that's being bought up by the BlackRocks and Fidelities of the world, and it's, in my estimation, fairly shocking what is about to happen. But I think conservatively, I think this cycle is the one where we see $100,000 Bitcoin. I would not be surprised to see $100,000 to $150,000 Bitcoin, if not much higher, depending on how much attention it gets. But that's my metrics for right now.
Yeah, we'll see. Time will tell, right? It's
Mhm.
fun times. This is the fun time.
Yeah, we've just started to embark on the fun time, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. I want to touch a little bit on Bitcoin mining. You said you kind of got into that early on, pushed it away because whatever time stuff and maybe whatever lack of interest or whatever. But you're back into it now. So tell me about Bitcoin mining, how you do it, just a little bit about what part it plays in your portfolio, how you think of it.
So when I first started meaningfully investing in the world of crypto, I was still in my infancy when it comes to my personal finance journey. So I was really struggling to invest more than a couple $100 per month um, into all this. I was trying to grow my salary and grow the amount of money I could put into the space. But I was aware and I understood what mining was, and so I was really interested in it, and I wanted to get involved. But as things progressed, Bitcoin mining became more and more cost prohibitive, became a bigger thing, and it just was kind of this it's kind of far away dream. But I kept thinking about it, and then I went through a full crypto cycle very successfully, and I was able in this most recent one to start jumping into in a meaningful way Bitcoin mining. So as of today, across machines I actually own, and then being invested in companies that run machines, and I have a part of those, and then also in publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies through stocks. I've invested about 120 to $130,000 into Bitcoin mining so far, which is not as much as I put into Bitcoin directly. But for me and my income and my overall portfolio size, that was a fairly meaningful investment.
Mhm.
So that's I got pretty serious about it. And so far, the experiment has worked out pretty well. I've been doing it for about a year and a half now,
Mhm.
and I've mined about 2.5 Bitcoin. And if I had deployed that capital at the time of buying the machines, I could have had a little over 3 Bitcoin. So I'm just short of that. I will hit right under 3 Bitcoin mined before the halving,
Mhm.
and then the year following the halving, if things go the way I think they will, I'll probably mine about 4 in total in that year following. So the experiment has been very eye opening and fun and lucrative so far.
You're not doing it at your home though, like heating your hot water tank or anything like that. You're not one of those guys, are you?
No, but that is super cool. There are people I've followed on Twitter who
Yeah.
they heat their house with machines, and a buddy of mine he used heat exchangers and liquid cooled his Bitcoin miners and heated his pool
Wow.
with his machines, which is pretty cool. No, all mine are at facilities in a few different states around the country, just because my electricity costs here in Austin are a little too high to successfully do it.
Yeah.
And also there's the noise and just power requirements, the infrastructure. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I have someone else manage all that for me.
Fun, fun. Is that something you think you will continue to do to dollar cost average into Bitcoin mining? Or how do you think about that? Like directly investing into Bitcoin versus going and buying miners and going that route?
Uh, Directly investing into Bitcoin is always the thing. If people are interested in Bitcoin, that's the direction I always recommend, because it's just so simple and you have the coins and there's no added complication. It just makes sense. And it's the proven path. Mining is full of so many unknowns and variables. It is very much an experiment, and you are at the mercy of your entry point in the cycle and different things like that. However, mining is extremely exciting to me for a bunch of different reasons. One, the math, which I model it all the time. I have a spreadsheet modeling the block rewards and upcoming halving and the current price and various things. The math shows that I can actually mine more in total bitcoins than I could have bought
Mhm.
buying directly. So that's one really cool aspect. It's not a guarantee. I
Right.
might not. The jury's still out on that. We'll see in a year or two. That's really exciting. But one of the exciting parts for me is the hardware arbitrage opportunity.
Mhm.
Uh, I buy these machines, I mine on them for a year and a half to 2 years. I wait for us to get into a full on bull market. I wait for pandemonium, and everybody's just desperate to get machines. I sell my machines for a
Mhm.
profit, and I keep all the Bitcoin I mined along the way,
Mhm.
and potentially even further crazy increase the profitability of the entire enterprise. And then I wait for a bear market. I buy machines again at bottom dollar prices, and then I start the entire thing again. Now, this is my first full cycle of doing this, so I might get it all wrong, and it might not work out that way. But I have done lots of hardware arbitrage in the past, just not to the same degree, and it's been very successful. So that is one of the big motivators for doing this, was seeing how that aspect of this experiment plays out, because I think it could be very exciting.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you're thinking about that. Let's talk about your YouTube channel, and you've also got a podcast. I think you've got a newsletter as well. You're putting out a lot of content. When did you get started with YouTube and realizing the power of YouTube and wanting to create content?
So YouTube, I started in 2015. I started a cinema channel called Burger Fiction, which is where this that silver play button came from.
Uh-huh.
It was pretty successful. That one has like 85 million views or
Oh,
something like that.
wow.
So I learned some of the ropes of uh, building on YouTube. I started that with a good friend of
And
mine.
what were you doing? You were doing like movie reviews?
Movie reviews, super cuts,
Uh-huh.
where like we did one that is every Jason Statham punch ever,
Uh-huh.
and every Tom Cruise running ever, which was a 20-minute video where it's literally showing you every second from every movie he's ever been where he's running.
Mhm.
And my God, we would spend 40 hours on a
Oh,
single video,
man.
because you have to watch through every movie in the catalog of that person and find every little. So it was an unbelievable undertaking. Some people are like supercuts; those are dumb and easy, or whatever. It was like a lot of work,
Right.
uh, and that was fun. And we built, and I was figured out how to build a channel, and I had kind of developed a love for not Bitcoin, YouTube, but a cinema channel was not a money maker.
Mhm.
So I kind of retired that one. Still had the love for YouTube, and then I started a personal finance channel in 2020, because my photography business, because of something that happened in 2020, which maybe people remember what that was, caused my business to go on pause for like 9 months, where I had no work or whatever.
Right.
Which is another moment where I was like, I'm so glad I have an emergency fund. I'm so glad I have investments. I'm so glad I have some passive income going, because that dealing with that type of stuff out of the blue, it's crazy.
Mhm.
But I all of a sudden had more time. I wasn't spending, all my time on my business. So I finally had this, the time to put this idea in the back of my head of start a new channel and talk about this love of personal finance you've been developing over the past decade as you've done this journey. So I started Your Friend Andy in June of 2020, and it was personal finance. And I wasn't getting much traction with just talking about best ways to save your money. So I was like, how can I be useful? So I started reviewing banks and credit cards and stuff like that. And then I got traction with those videos because people actually wanted to get an opinion on this bank account, know what all the features were and stuff. And the entire time I was doing that, first probably 9 months to 1 year of the channel doing that type of content, I still had this love of crypto and Bitcoin, but I was kind of scared to talk about it online,
Mhm.
because I know what the cycles are, and I know the moment that it turns sour, my channel gets no views.
Right.
And why would I want to, talk about a thing like that?
Mhm.
But I eventually just, I'm just so passionate about it, and so excited about it, I couldn't not, and so I did. And that's the moment, of course, the channel blew up. It just, I tripled and quadrupled my subscribers in a single month, and just views and views and views, and then the crash and
Yep.
the bear market, and then I've been just building for the past year and a half, and finally crossed 100,000 on this channel. But it's super fun. It's my favorite job I've ever had. And as it turns out, if you pick the right things and you're smart about it, YouTube can also be a big time moneymaker.
So go into that a little bit more. How is it monetized? I mean, there's a lot of people listening to this that watch a lot of YouTube, but really don't understand like the background of it all and how a guy like you is making money from it.
Yeah, so it's different for everybody. There is a unlimited ways you can monetize your channel. I choose a couple different ways. There's the base way, which is YouTube pays you for playing ads on your channel, and depending on what niche or which topic you talk about, those rates might be pretty high or they might be pretty low. If you're a gamer, and you have millions of views on your channel, you might not make as much as my channel does with only a few 100,000 views,
Hmm.
because finance and this world is just higher up the hierarchy of advertiser interest. And there's ones that are even more lucrative than that. When I was making the banking content and my channel had 5,000 subscribers, the channel was making about $10,000 a month.
Wow.
It was a very tiny channel just because that was such a lucrative niche. But that's not just from the ads. I was also doing affiliate links and referral links. So if someone signed up for a bank account that I was recommending, some of those banks give you a kickback for sending a friend or family or whoever their way, and someone opens an account, you get $100 back. And if you do that on scale and
Yeah.
you put a video out there that's working for you and the platform's pushing it in front of people, you make money.
Hmm.
And then the big other way I've made money with YouTube is just sponsors, people who reach out directly and say, "Hey, I have a product or a service or a company, and I want you to talk about it." And traditionally, I've said no to like 99% of those because a lot of it is junk and a
Yeah.
lot of it isn't great. But there's so much quantity. I do find ones in there I do really like, and then I work up a partnership with them. They pay me directly, and maybe even on top of that, I get a referral.
Hmm.
That's like the three main ways I've monetized it. But now I have another way, which is I have a private membership community. You can there's channels who sell merchandise or they sell digital products or courses. I mean, I don't do any of those things, but there's like unlimited ways you can do it. And every single one of those is its own standalone income stream that if one of them starts dipping one month, the other one might compensate for it. It's so not only do I have multiple, passive income streams or income streams in general, like, YouTube and my other business and crypto passive income and my investment appreciation, but each one of those has like 5 to 30 individual streams within it.
Whoa.
And that's one of the things I love about YouTube and a lot of things I'm doing is I love that compartmentalization of having all these streams in these different categories and having that redundancy and having a very robust way to make money.
When did you sever your ties with your full-time job and leave and to pursue all this? Like you're doing a lot of creative things and people need time to do that. So when did you leave behind your W-2 job? What year was that?
2014.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yep. And then after that, I did my small business for 11 years, and I just retired that. I shut that down completely 2 years ago now.
Got it. So I think they say like the average millionaire has like 7 streams of income. It sounds like you've got 30 at least.
Well, the crypto passive income one is like 30 sources by itself. The YouTube one is at least 4 or 5 streams. Yeah,
It's pretty
yeah.
wild.
Well, quantity is helpful.
Quantity is helpful. Tell me about your newsletter. What are you? How often does that come out? What's it called? What kind of content are you covering?
It's called Passive Bites, and it's asking. It's funny to ask how often. It's supposed to be a weekly newsletter. Some weeks I miss or whatever. It's a little bit at my own discretion. Um, it's two things. It's one, it's sharing passive income opportunities that I'm looking at or considering. But two, it's also just kind of sharing my thoughts on building streams of income, building wealth, investing, or whatever. Things that I think are helpful that I wish I could have kind of read at my various stages of my journey to get here. But really, it's I don't know what it is because it's one of those things where I was told by a lot of really smart people, you need to have an email newsletter and you
Mhm.
need to have this whole thing. And so I just did it because it was smart to do, and I'm kind of figuring it out as I go what it should be. I've had fun with it, and I think people do like it, but it's kind of an ever evolving animal.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you find you're pretty transparent and open about everything you're doing, the numbers, things like that? Do you find there are downsides to that, or have you experienced downsides?
Um, my family doesn't like it.
Uh-huh.
They think it's pretty weird and maybe not a great idea. You know, I see there's multiple sides to it. On one side, especially being in the world of crypto, having good OPSEC or good operational security is very important because you don't want people to know exactly how much you have in your wallet so they can attack you specifically and try to get your money. So I wrestle with that side, but I also wrestle with the side that, um, you know, especially for the 9 to 5 world, becoming friends with people, and then finding out after several hanging outs and several lunches and stuff, we get real comfortable and we talk about our salaries and stuff, and realizing, oh, we do almost the same job and they get paid $20,000 more a year than I do, or having a conversation with somebody who does something more than me and finding out I make more than they do, and then being bummed about that,
Mhm.
and just how in the dark everyone is all the time about things with involving money in our culture.
Mhm.
Um, that aspect too, but also wanting to share these things because I think transparency makes things more real and makes them more achievable. And I still stand by the fact that I don't believe myself to be special. I think anyone can do the stuff I've done.
Mhm.
And if me sharing it gives you a little bit of like oomph or motivation to do it yourself, because early in my journey watching YouTube, I remember watching like the Graham Steffens or the Andre
Mhm.
Jicks of the personal finance world, who are the giants in that space now,
Mhm.
and they'd share like how much they make in passive income or how much they make from their YouTube channel, and my mind just being expanded and going, I want that, I want those things. I didn't go, they're bragging, I'm jealous or envious. I said they can do it, I can do it, so I'm going to do it. And so part of it is also just me sharing those things because I really hope truly that people see that, um, and feel that way. But it also gets a lot of hate. A lot of people really get bothered by it, and you get both sides. But that's just being online. If you're going to be online, you have to.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be prepared for that. Talk to me about, you had mentioned Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans. Talk to me a little bit about that idea for somebody that's not familiar with it, and how you think somebody could do what you are doing, like if they have 1,000 true fans.
Yeah. So Kevin Kelly, also, if people don't know who Kevin Kelly is, you should definitely go look him up and just check out all his stuff because he's such a cool guy, definite innovator, early adopter, smart guy, successful. But he's also had some just really impactful ideas on me, which namely 1,000 True Fans, which is maybe his most famous online written piece. But it's the idea that anyone can make it in this new digital world if they can just find 1,000 true fans, 1,000 people out there who really love what they're trying to do and what they're trying to share, and are willing to come along on that journey with you and support you in some way, whether it's like buying your t-shirt or subscribing to your channel or buying your membership or whatever. That anyone can kind of make it out there if they can find 1,000 people just like that. And you know 1,000 is a little bit of a daunting number, but it's also a very realistic number simultaneously because there's YouTubers with millions of subscribers. I don't know if I'll ever get to millions of subscribers, but I can tell you once upon a time, 100,000 subscribers seemed like a far away idea. And now here I'm there. My first 1,000 was a struggle to get there, but I got there. And it just was this idea that I kind of latched onto that said, if I could just do this, I can make this whole thing work. And so far, it has absolutely been proven true.
What advice do you have for someone who is just getting started? Like how to, what would you tell them? Like to keep pressing on, and how to do this the right way? Like what would you say to somebody?
There's a saying in investing, and I think it applies to more than just investing, which is scared money don't make money. Uh, and I love that because almost everybody you encounter in life, um, everybody you would kind of lump into the realm of having average lives or kind of mediocre lives, and they're not particularly happy or particularly unhappy. They're just kind of going through life doing their own thing, which is good and bad. I'm not trying to dismiss that. Um, they're almost overwhelmingly doing things that are within their comfort zone,
Hmm.
and that's why they're where they are. And so, if you want to do anything that's outside of the average or outside of the mediocre, and you want to do something that is, off the beaten path or different, you're going to have to do something that's scary or something that's risky or something that makes you deeply uncomfortable on a multitude of levels. Uh, However, if you're able to internalize the upside and really believe that it's worth the embarrassment or the other downsides, which those are real things. I was very embarrassed early on with a lot of the stuff. Then you should absolutely chase that because let me just tell you, It's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. If you watch my early videos on the channel, I'm very uncomfortable. I speak like a robot. I'm very slow to speak. And even that was me having experienced my previous channel. And that's how bad I was at the beginning, but I still just pushed through it because I had this dream or this idea of what this could mean for my life. And I think that if you're going to chase that, it has to be more than just, it's going to make me a lot of money. It's got to be something you actually like think is going to be just a blast to do. But if you have ever had that thought and you aren't doing at least something to act on it, you're doing yourself a great disservice, because the last thing you want in your life is to be 80 years old in your deathbed and looking back on things with major regret. That's one of the most scary and terrifying things I can think of, and that's been a huge motivator. Is I refuse to get to the end of my life on my deathbed, if I make it that far, and look back and go, I really wish I had done this,
Mhm.
or oh, if I'd only done that, if I'd only seen this, if I'd only tried this. And it's so like trite, but it's like I would rather try to do those things and just fail than to just never have tried them before. And that's always been a stronger emotion than the fear or whatever. So if you can just get over that fear, man, it can be so good.
That is a great place to stop. I really appreciate all your insight here, and talking has been really fun. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, if you can digest a little bit of that and run with it, then my job here is done. I'm happy.
Awesome. So for our listeners that want to find out more about you, your YouTube channel, follow you on Twitter, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just hop on YouTube and type in your friend Andy, and you'll find my channel. And then from there, you can find my Twitter and my newsletter and everything else.
Awesome. Andy, thanks so much for your time. This has been a lot of fun.
How do you get started with stock investing? I've put together a course to teach you everything I wish I knew when I first started investing in stocks. Let's start at the beginning and ask, what is a stock? Let's zoom on into what it's actually like to buy a stock. A few options are Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Ally, E-Trade. Fortunately, you won't have to necessarily calculate all of these taxes yourself. I'll outline a few main ones to be aware of throughout your lifetime investing journey. As Warren Buffett says, your best investment is yourself. There's nothing that compares to it. By the end, you'll be savvier about stock investing and personal finance than the vast majority of people. Even if you're not a total beginner, I'm confident you'll get a lot out of the principles and strategies I outline, which we'll build on throughout. A link to the course is available in the description below. See you there.
So that's who I'm writing for. And that's the simple path is laid out for that kind of person. The nice thing about it is not only is the simple path simple for people who really don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about it, but it is also the most powerful way you can invest.